Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, here we go. Another wonderful day over here.
Uri Hashem.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Kalayim, Pei Halacha Aleph, and Halacha Beis. Let's just see if we are up. Yes, we are. We are learning Daf Mem Zayin, and we are all the way on top of the Amid Mamish by the two dots. Kerem Shematua Irbuvia V'chulei. So we will start today referring back to Halacha Aleph, to the Mishnah that we learned on Daf Mem Dalit, and I'm quoting verbatim the machlekes that we have in the Mishnah. That Kerem Shematua Irbuvia. It means if you have a vineyard in which the person did not plant the vines properly aligned in rows, but it's all chaotic. Nevertheless, if you can find in there any way you want to go, you're going to find, so to say, a row of two that's aligned opposite a row of three. Interestingly, normally the lashon is shtayim keneged shtayim ba'achas yoytze zanav means the same thing. This is actually, as we mentioned, the source that the Rash uses to argue with the Rambam that the Zanav is not in between the rows, because the Mishnah here says Shtayim keneged shalish. Well, let's go weiter. So then Harei Zekerem. However, v'im lav, if you don't have any such two rows planted that you can see in it, order in the disorder, then the Tanna Kama says it's not a kerem at all, and all of them are viewed as individual vines. However, Rav Meir Oimer, since there is over here many vines and it's nira, I'll tell you soon what that means, then yes, Rav Meir holds that it is considered a vineyard. So 2 points, Beshitas Rav Meir. I think I mentioned one of them when we learned the Mishnah. That is that based on what we learned in the previous chapter, Rabbi Meir agrees that if a person only planted 5 vines, which is the minimum amount, and it's not shtayim keneged shtayim ba'achas yoytze zanav, it's not shtayim keneged shalish, even Rav Meir agrees it's not a vineyard. Our Mishnah is speaking about a large amount of vines. What does a large amount mean? I don't know. And the nira means that Rav Meir holds that since people, when they would look at this area and they see many vines planted, it gives to the people who are observant, like Amaras Ayin, the appearance of a vineyard. So midrabanan, that has to be treated like a vineyard, and you have to give it the 4 amas. Okay, that's the shita of Rabbi Meir. Our Gemara, all the way up until the Mishnah, is going to focus more on the shita of the Tanna Kama, and they're going to define in great detail what does aligned mean, what does disaligned mean. We're going to have, the Gemara will bring other b'raisas, right, works of Tanoim that will speak about a vineyard that has in it one row that's unaligned. Because in our Mishnah, it's the Mishnah says that if you have shtayim keneged shalish, then harei zekerem. But let's get into more details. What happens if part of it is a kerem, but part of it, even only one row, is unaligned? How do we view that unaligned row? That will be extremely important. And one of the topics that we will bring up on Daf Mem Zayin at the end of Halacha Aleph, before the Mishnah, will mamish be repeated today on Daf Mem Zayin Amid Beis. But let's go in the order. Then we're going to have on Daf Mem Zayin Amid Aleph on the bottom Halacha Beis that quotes a machlokes between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim regarding, even though we mentioned, and which is true, which is the halacha, that the minimum space needed in between rows is daladames. Right, and if you don't even have daladames, that means they're so close together. Even if they are aligned, we learned that it's not a kerem. This is actually the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. The Chachamim disagree with that. The Chachamim hold that if you have rows that are planted, even with a less of a 4 amma interval, the Chachamim hold it's still a kerem. And why? There's a reason. The reason is royin oisoy. That we since when people plant a vineyard so packed together, the presumption, which is the majority, is that they do not plan to leave the vines in this packed configuration, because you actually need 4 amas for your oxen and for your wagons That's called the avodah, to go around the vines and then to harvest the vines, both for the planting, plowing, pruning, and for the harvesting. You need the daladamas, so you don't plan to leave it there. So it was planted with the intent of them being uprooted in a short while. Since you plan to uproot it, it's as if it's already uprooted. That is the shita of the Chachamim. The Gemara is going to elaborate from a Braisa how the Rab Shimon will respond to this logic, because theoretically they agree with Royin at times, but not over here. And what we will develop will be fascinating. Will be a machloikes amoyroyim between Rabbi Chananya and Rav Mana in the understanding of the machloikes between the Chachamim and Rab Shimon. And finally, hopefully, if we'll get all the way to the bottom of the Amid, the Gemara will inquire. We'll have a two-sided question as how far do we say this logic that since the vines lechatchila were planted to be uprooted, guys, in other words, they planted some of the vines in order to use its wood, firewood. That's what we say. People don't plant vines so close together to leave them there. So we say that the Chachamim hold, and we'll see even Rab Shimon agrees theoretically to it was planned to be uprooted. It's as if royin that they're not there. There are two ways of how to understand it. They're saying it in a narrow way, and they're saying it all the way, as we will see when we learn the sugya. And let's leave it at that. Here again, having access to pictures will be extremely helpful to understand the technical cases of the Gemara. And unlike the last few days, where in quantity we had relatively small daf, and today we have actually a relatively large daf. So let's see how much we can go in Ba'oifin, that we're not going too quick, but we're moving. Okay. So, Kevin, take off that picture because we're not talking, we don't need that at all. Kerem, Shehuna Tua Irbuvia. We're going to need pictures in a moment. So, as we just quoted the words on the Mishnah, Daf Mem Dalid, Machlekes Chachamim and Rabbi Meir, and the Gemara will explain the shita of the Chachamim. They hold that you do need to have the alignment in order for you to create a kerem. So let's go. Now, the words are the Baraisa. There's a machlekes here as to how to read it. Either hakoires, if it's read that way, the word hakoires is a word that's used for the trunks of the vine, or the Rashi Ilio says you read it hakaveres. Now, kaveres literally means a beehive, but he explains that it is appropriate at times to use the word beehive in reference to the trunks of the vines, because trunks of grapevines in the bottom are wider, and as you go up, they become narrower, which is the form of a beehive. So however you'll pronounce it, we are speaking about alignment. Let me just tell you what we're talking about. There is the alignment of the trunks, and then there is the alignment of the branches. Which one of them needs to be aligned? It can go either way. The trunks, when you planted it, they can be aligned. And for some reason, sometimes the branch of one goes to the right, the branch of the other goes to the left. Sometimes you can plant the trunks disaligned, and for whatever reason, the branches do align. So what are we looking for? Where are we looking for the alignment? That's the first topic, and the Braisa says clearly, there's no argument. It's all about the ikir, it's all about the trunk. Hakaveres mechuvan or hakoides mechuvan, if the trunks are aligned, even though the branches are not aligned, right? They're growing in different directions. Doesn't matter. That's good. That's the alignment. And then the other side, if all you have is hanleif mechuvan, if the branches are aligned, but v'hakoides or v'hakaveres eina mechuvan, again, we're saying the concept is that the trunk of the vines is the iker, then eino iker. Now that we said that we are looking for the alignment in the trunks, what were to happen if the trunks, when they were planted, they were very narrow, which is normal, and they were not plant aligned. They were not planted, the trunks were not aligned. But as they grew and the trunks got thicker, the one that was a bit more to the right, for some reason, it thickened more to the left. The other one that was planted a little bit off in one direction, it thickened to the correct direction. So now, at some point, they aligned themselves. But when Ha'abu, yes, another chiddush. Even though from the beginning it was not called a kedem, and they aligned themselves, so to say, naturally, nevertheless, from when they aligned, they become a kedem. Harei ze kedem. So that way, that's easy. Now it's going to get fun. And now, Kevin, if I can, I know, guys, we are where we're at. But if Kevin, if you can already put up the picture that you have in 47A2, the one picture to the left, you'll hop the next topic. Now, this is the Braisa still. Says the Braisa, Ketzad hu yoideya im chuvan, saying. Let's if you can straighten out the page, if that's possible, I don't know, make it a little bit flatter. I want everyone to be able to read the words we have on top of the left and the words we have the B string on the outer edge of the inner vines. You can see, and if you can just see that, even like this, you can see it. But if you can see it better, even better. Okay, so Ketzad is saying how exactly. Let me say these words. How much? Oh, that's much better. How much latitude can we give to say they are aligned? Now, the case that the Braisa is referring to, we are speaking about a vineyard that has 2 rows. Whoever you have to see, it's so helpful with the picture. Each row is 6 vines, and here in the picture, the rows are configured north-south by the goyim, north-south over here for some reason, top bottom, milmayla lamat, and here the left row, there's only 2 rows. The left row are michuvanois, as the Braisa explained, the trunks are aligned, and the right row, which have 6, are not michuvanis. Not michuvanis means that 3 of the 6, the way he made it here, it's a great picture for many reasons, are a little bit more to the left, and 3 are a little bit more to the right. Okay, now guys, don't forget that really a kedem has to have 3 and 2. And as we mentioned, if you'll take a look at the picture, they have 3 and 2 because the row to the left has 6. The row to the right has Stein Keneged Stein. Take a good look. And then Ba'achas Yoitza Zanav. You don't need Zanav. I'm sorry, because you have 3 and 3. You have 3 and 3. But we want to know whether we put them all together or whether the outermost 3 that are disaligned, whether they're not part of the kedem. So says the Braisa. And there are 2 ways of how to measure alignment or what is needed for them to be halachically considered aligned. Maybe you bring a string and you stretch the string alongside the vines. And now the Gemara says there's a machloekes tanoim. Is tanoim tanei that you have to put the string mibafnim? Mibafnim means that put the string in the inner edge of the inner vines. Guys, in the inner edge of the inner vines is picture A. I want to show you what I mean by the inner edge of the inner vines. No one will hold that you put the string all the way to the right, all the way that you're not doing that. The left row, you don't use a string, it's aligned. If you have to see the picture. No, don't go out. Don't go out. You're ruining it when you go out. So now, do you put the string? Option number 1, that's called mibafnim. You are putting it in the inner edge of the inner vines. Or look in B. You're putting it, again, on the row to the right, but you're putting it on the right side, which is on the outer edge. The inner vines is what he's calling the row to the right is not called the inner vines. Since the row to the right has some vines to the left and some vines to the right, you zicher do not put the string all the way in the outer part of the right column. That's for sure not. You're putting it connected to the ones that are closer to the aligned row. That's good words. The only question is on which side? A, B. So and let's go. What will be the nafkamina? So Amar Rabbi Yoina explains. He says, very good. According to the version, according to the Tanoim that say option A is the way to go. So what are we saying? What are we looking for? Now, guys, there's a lot of latitude. We are saying that the right outermost right 3. You see that? The 3 that are protruding on the right line. If you measure from their trunk, from the bottom left trunk, all the way to the rope, if they are within a tefach, one of the other, then we can consider all of them, even the outermost 3, as part of this rope. Ubamela, guys, when you measure the 4 amas, you are measuring it even from the outermost 3.
That's called a line?
That's called a line, a tefach. Very good. Now, the reason why some Tanoim insist that the string has to be placed, guys, it's not all the way on the outside. Not all the way. It's in the outer of the inner vines, right? Picture B, we need for the string to touch both the left side of the outermost three, and it should touch the right side of the innermost three. We're giving much less latitude. They're talking not aligned, but since this string, if the string touches both sides, then we consider them all together. In other words, the version that says mibachutz, they give less latitude to align the disaligned. Now we're not done yet. Now we have to go further. Now for the next case, what will be very important, Kevan, let's go slowly. I love this. Put the picture, the top right picture of the right column in the art scroll. 47A2. What happens? We need the picture up. We're making now a vineyard that has 3 rows. For some reason, I don't know why, he changes the direction of the rows. We're going now rows that are going from right to left. These are rows that have 5. So when you have row 1 and row 2, you got yourself a vineyard. You have more than time. That's it. You have 5 and 5. Now row 3, here it's not about. Until now, we were learning that in the row itself, there was a disalignment. Now we're saying row 3 is aligned with itself. But if you take a good look at this picture, every single vine of row 3 is not keneged shtayim, but it's like the zanav of the Rambam. It's in between the vines of the top 2 rows. Is it considered part of or not? That's this brayso. Let's read it inside. Shura ha-chitzaina. In our picture, the chitzaina is the bottom one. Row number 1 is also chitzaina, but that's the row 1 and 2 are aligned. Row number 3, she'eina mechubanis keneged ha-kirasim. Again, the words kirasim would be trunks. Gavaldik. So says the brayso, since it's not aligned, it's not considered part of the kerem. That's the way we have to learn. It's very important. It's so cryptic, the words of the braysos. Yeah, the 3rd row won't be different than any other singular vine that has its unique avodah, not Rabbi Yishmael. Normally, what we are learning, everyone else, 6 tfachim, all you need is 6 tfachim. But that means if I'm going in the picture further down from row 3, I'm going to have to plan something outside 4 amas of row 2, outside 6 tvachim of row 3, even though it's going to be within 4 amas, outside 4 amas of row 2, outside 6 tvachim of row 3, and even though it's going to be within 4 amas of row 3, it doesn't matter. It's disaligned, it's not connected, period. Now we have a detail. Okay, let's go with what I just mentioned. Now we'll go to the final picture. You'll see the beauty of it. Perfect. Here again, guys, we have 3, same thing, 3 rows, same case. Row number 1 has 5 vines. Row number 2 has 5 vines. Between row and 2, we left the normal distance, which is 4 amas. We're good. They're not 4 amas, guys, including the trunks. I'm just saying that. You see where you put the dots, including the trunks means that's why if it would be less, then it wouldn't need, they will be too close together. It's the right distance. Row number 3, aside of it being not aligned, aside of that, there's a very little space between 2 and 3. Why am I saying very little space? Now look inside area A, area B. Area A, I just want you to know, area A is within 6 tfachim of row 3. Area A is also within 4 amas of row 2. In other words, you cannot plan 4 and C in area A for 2 reasons. Number 1, you're kidding? You have a vineyard. Where's the vineyard? Rows 1 and 2. And area A is within 4 amas of row 2. No, another reason. Row 3 is an individual vine. In an individual vine, you're not allowed to plant within 6 tfachim. Area A is within 6 tfachim. What is unique over here is that area B, amazing, is outside 6 tfachim from row 3, but it's still within 4 amis of row 2. Notice, you might have thought that since the end of the kerem is row 3, we already halachically said it's not considered part of the vineyard. So if I go outside of 6 tvachim, I'm outside of it. No.
Maybe 4 amos from row 2 if row 3 is...
Very good. Very good.
It's the same area.
If you're planting in area A not only is within 4 amos of row 2, but it's also within 6 tvachim of row 3, then of course, no, there's no chiddush here. Chiddush will be, that's the novelty. That's what Rabbi is saying. That if you're planting in area B, which the Brais is using the words chutz l'shisha, it means area B is already outside of the 6 tvachim of row 3. So what you planted there is asur because, like we mentioned, it's within 4 amis of row 2, which actually means that row 3 itself remains mutar. Hagfanim mutarais. Don't forget, when you plant something within the area that you were not allowed to plant it in, it makes everything asur. It makes the geffen asur, it makes the barley asur. Not over here. Here, area B will be asur. Row 2 will be asur. Row number 3 will be mutar. Hagafana mutaris vakedem asur. Wow. And we're going to use this. We're going to use this to prove that row 3 is so disconnected from the vineyard, it's so not subservient at all, ad kedei kach, that even though row 2 becomes asur, and by the way, we learned above that according to Beis Hillel, not only will row 2 become asur if you planted foreign seed in area B, the kerem becomes asur. I know not 50 rows, but rows 2 and 1. So you're going to have rows 2 and 1 will become prohibited. Midoiraisa, kili akerem, asur bano. Row 3 that's so close to row 2, row 3 that's closer to the foreign sea will not become asur at all. You can eat it. Okay. For some reason, the Gemara is going to go back to the first case of the Mishnah. Remember when you had the Kerem Shecharav, and the Mishnah says the words, as long as you have 10 remaining in a Beisav, and the Mishnah used the words Kerem Dal. So the Zehu Kerem Dal, that's the definition of a Kerem Dal. Not cotton gadol. Cotton gadol is 2 rows. Gadol is 3 rows of 3 minimum. No, kedem dal. Now you know what it means. It means dal b'kefanim ba'asher ba'avodos. It means that even though you only have 10 gefanim that are spread out over an area of a beisah, since it's still considered a kedem, therefore you're bound to the rule of 4 amos, not to the rule of 6 tvachim. So the asher ba'avodos, relative. Poor is a relative. Poor relative to what? Relative to the area that becomes prohibited all the way around the 10 that are already spread out, which is 4 amos in all directions, which is so humongous. Relative to that, you only have 10 gefanim. That's why we call it poor. Poor relative to the amount of the shear of 4 amos. Why 4 amos, not 6 tvachim? Because it's still considered a keren. Okay. Moving on to halacha base. We mentioned this by heart. This Mishnah has one machloikis tanoi. Says the Holy Mishnah. Everything is aligned over here. But you planted it too close together. Too close together is, don't forget that when you have a kedem, and we're saying that a kedem creates an isur of planting any foreign seed with daladamas is not just outside of the kedem, it's also within the kedem, right? Why daladamas? Where do we get daladamas? Because for you to properly work, do avoida on a kedem, and you need for that oxen, and you need wagons. When you have a keren yechidis, whether it's one or halachically yechidis, you don't need oxen and wagons. You do it manually. You're walking there with your ladder and your basket. You need only 6 tefachim. But once you have a vineyard, it's a vineyard, you need to have 4 amos. So comes along a person, kerem shunotua al pachus ma'arba ames. All right. In other words, you have less than 4 amos of intervals. Truth be told, I'm going to say this just once because not to go further to complicate things. The same is also between every vine in a row itself. Same thing. But we're not going to focus on that. We're focusing on the space between rows. So if it's with, you don't have 4 ames, and we kept on saying it's not a kedem, really that's Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon is the one that says that einoi kedem, and the reason is since it's not sufficient room, right, to be able to do the avoida with the oxen and the wagons, the plowing and the harvesting, so that's not called a kedem. You can't, it doesn't function as a kedem. Daf mem zayin omid beis. And the Chachamim theoretically would agree with him, but they don't. Why don't they? So the Chachamim say the words kedem, but they give a reason. What's the reason? Royin. Royin is a concept, right? Kol haroy lebila. Royin is a concept that we have throughout Shas, right? That since something has to be burnt, michtas katashi orayu, v'chulei v'chulei, we have these ideas that who would plant a row so close together? You can't. No one is wasting their time and their land and their resources. No, for sure that whoever planted the vineyard is not planning to keep all the vines in the ground. This person needs firewood, and the person from the outset planted some vines to remain, some vines to be uprooted for wood. So therefore, the royin as one soy is kiloeno. So let me just give you an example of the emtsoyos, and I want you to take a picture, even though we're going to need the picture really for later. But look at the picture right now. Whoever has an art school, again, 47B1, the picture all the way to the left. So again, he's making a vineyard here for whatever reason. He's giving you 5 rows of 6. And the focus, my friends, is not in between. I know that whoever looks at the picture might get confused. I think they're amazing. But when they wrote through the 3 amas that you see on the right side of the picture is not in between the vines on the road. It's not that at all. B'chlal. He's just describing that between rows 1 and 2, the letters, the words, 3 amas didn't fit the way it fit in 6 amas because there's less space. So he put it aligned in a different direction, perpendicular to the 6 amas. But just to clear, between every single row, there's only 3 amas. That's the case of the Mishnah. And you planted 5 rows. The Chachamim say that you're planting some of them to be removed. I want to go into already this detail. Which ones are you going to remove? We presume that you plan to remove rows 2 and 4. Why do we presume that you leave? Why 2 and 4? No, because when you plant a vineyard, you want to have one at the edge. That will be row number 1. You want to have another one on the other edge, row number 5. There's enough space, right? It's not the 6 amas between 1 and 3, 6 amas between 3 and 5. Perfect. And the reason why you packed in 2 and 4 is because you want to have some wood. And since we halachically presume that this was your intent, not for it to remain, but for it to be removed, so we already look at it as if it's removed, and therefore everything has a din of a kedem. Again, let's read the words inside. Now, I want you to know that the concept of Veroyin, you would even argue, al pi Chasidus, that Rab Shimon, that Rashbi, he for sure looks at the Pnimius. He gives a lot of credibility to intent, right? In Hilchas Shabbos, everything that's connected to intent, Davar she'einu mischaven, Rab Shimon is muta legamri. Even a malacha she'netzricha legufa, at least it's downgraded from a doiraisa to a rabbanan. It's only yasser mit rabbanan. It's not chayv chatos. That's all Rab Shimon. But why wouldn't he say royin? He should be the one that says royin. No, the Gemara now quotes a doiraisa that will write the rebuttal that Rab Shimon have against the Chacham. Let's read the Gemara. Amar the doiraisa. Amar Rab Shimon. Oisam sha'atam oimrim royim es hametzois kilo einam harei heini karish al kanem. So he's saying a gavaldik thing. And actually, I think it would be better, even though he didn't do it that way, but take a look at picture to the right, at the picture to the right. I know the picture to the left has 5. That's very important, 5 rows. Picture to the right on the article has 6 rows, and that will be very important. But let me use the picture to the right, even though we'll see, Lav Dafka, Rab Shimon was only speaking about the picture to the right. Maybe he was speaking to the picture on the left. We'll see that in Machlekes Hamoraim. But if you take a look at that picture, look at this. You see, unlike when you have 5 rows, where there's a certain greater logic, I would say, to argue that your kavanah was to remove 2 and 5, 2 and 4, if you only have 5 rows. Why am I saying that? Because then you remain with a row all the way in the periphery. You have a row all the way to the top. You're going to have a row all the way to the bottom, and you'll have one row in the middle. When you have 6, and you're saying that the person is planning to remove every second row, There's no logic to say that we know he's going to remove rows 2, 4, and 6. The same logic is maybe he's going to remove rows 1, 3, and 5. You can't. There's no reason to say one over the other. See, by 5 rows, there is a little bit more reason. There's reason to say that the person planted a vineyard and he's planning to leave the outermost rows. You have an odd number, he's gonna leave 3 and remove 2. Here, it's 3 and 3. Which 3 and 3? Either you're gonna lose the row all the way to the top, or you're gonna lose the row all the way to the bottom. I don't know which one you plan to remove. So Rab Shimon says, I know this person plans to remove, but I don't know which ones he will remove. There's no reason to say he's going to remove ones more than the other. So how do you look at the vineyard right now before you remove it? Why do you look at the iked? The iked means the ones that you plan to leave. What are you looking at? The ones that royin? I don't know where to apply it. And if I don't know if there's no indication which one he plans to leave, which one he plans to remove, I cannot say the words royin. They are all therefore there, and since they're all there, you got a kedem that doesn't have the avoida space. It's not called a kedem. Now I described the Gemara to simplify. Now we're going to have a machlokes amayroim. Are they arguing in case 5 rows, and they will agree in the row of 6 rows, or are they arguing in the case of 6 rows and they'll agree in the case of 5 rows? That's the machlokes where we're up to. So Amar Rabbi Chananya Hada Amra, from this brisa that recorded the rebuttal of Rab Shimon, way we learned it, that makes more sense that he was referring to sheish keneged sheish. It's not important how many vines were on each row. I'm just telling you. The Gemara is just making everything symmetrical because normally people planted it symmetrical. That means that they made the same number of rows, the same number in the vines. The iked is how many rows? The sheish, just to know. It makes sense that Rab Shimon made his argument when there's 6 because Yitaka don't know. He's removing 3. I don't know. Again, will he remove 2, 4, 6? Will he remove 1, 3, 5? I don't know. You got to leave them all there. But Rab Shimon, in the case where there's only 5 rows, okay, each one has 5. It can be each one has 6, each one has 7. That's 5 rows. Then according to Rabbi Chananya, Kol Ama, everyone, the ganze Welt, Moide, Shehem Roin, Esom Tsoyis Ki'ilu Einom, it makes a lot more sense that you plan to leave more than you plan to remove. You plan to leave the ones that are in the periphery. It looks like you're going to remove 2 and 4. And Taka, he'll agree with the Chachamim that you say Roin. That's Rabbi Chananya. Rav Mana says in Yiddish, Punkt Fakir, the opposite. They only argue in the case of 5 rows. Rabbi Mana, no. Hadad Teimar. Where do they argue? Where do they argue? Only B'Shalayim Chamish Keneged Chamish. Wow. Now, what will be the Chiddush? Chiddush will be that we still don't know. Because the Chachamim's logic is even greater. It makes sense. You're going to remove rows 2 and 4. Rav Shimon says, maybe he's going to remove 1 and 3. And let me add another nuance that some of the Noisei Kalim say. That when people do that, it's not just to make your kedem at the end more symmetrical. There's another factor. The other factor is, this is important, that when you plant vines, they do not all take well to the ground. Whoever even has a backyard or a front yard in LA, and you had your gardener that's not the greatest gardener plant trees, that happened, some of them chap, some of them don't. There is another factor. The other factor is that after you plant the vines, you're going to see which ones took root better, which ones are sickly, and that can also help you determine which rows you'll remove. You know you need to have at least 4 amos in between. When you add that, it makes a lot of sense. In other words, right. Shimon says that maybe it's going to, what will happen if Punkt row, in the case of 5 rows, row number 1, some of them didn't catch good, and all the other ones did. I need to have 4 amos between, at least 4 amos, right? In this case, you're going to end up having 6 amos, even better. You're going to have your minimum. So there are other factors that will determine later which rows I will remove, and I do not know the factors now, so therefore you can't say Ryan. That's by 5. But let me go in the other direction. Let's finish Rav Mana. Aval im hoyu sheish keneged sheish. But in the case of the picture to the right, where you have 6, even the Chachamim will be moida that you cannot say Ryan. You cannot say, for sure, aside of the factor that I just mentioned, maybe some of them won't be well, but even without that, You have 6, you're going to remove 3. There's no reason why one option is better than the other option. There's no logic. Based on what? Either you're going to remove 1, 3, 5, or you're going to remove 2, 4, 6. Even the Chachamim will be minded that you do not say Roin. Right? That Elu Atroya some Tsois Kilo Enam. Which ones? Why? Which ones are you going to say Enam? I don't know now. So therefore, you don't say Roin. Yes, Kevin.
But I thought the plants are in a row due to irrigation mostly.
It's probably part of it.
I think it's a major reason. The water goes directly straight as opposed to crooked. I mean,
don't say crooked. But we're talking about that the word avoida. Remember, once we introduce the word avoida, it's a key word. Amara, listen, it will be geschmack to speak to someone who actually grows vines. I know we have over here Gabriel. We should get him more involved. We have people in the shul that have vineyards. You need, again, today there's technology. I don't know how to apply this in halacha l'maisa. Today you have tractors, even when it comes to irrigation, kevan, to everything today, because of the chachma that God allowed us to have access to, and therefore we have what we call the modern world, things change. But the standard avoida space that is needed is 4 amas. And if the person did not leave 4 amas, you got yourself a problem. That in itself, okay. Now let's go to the chachamim. Mahu hadod taninan. How far do we take that which we learned? Shitas chachamim that we say roin, which according doesn't make a difference. L'Rab Hananya, l'Rab Man. That roin esam tzois kilo eno. The Gemara is asking. In the Bavli, the Gemara would speak out a lot more words. Okay, we already said clearly, Mendel, that l'chachamim, it's considered the vineyard. Now I have a simple question. You know what? Kevin, put up the picture of 6, even though the same thing is by 5. Just put up the picture of 6. And when you're going to measure now, l'chachamim, you have yourself a kedem. The din of a kedem is that you have to measure 4 amas from the vineyard. Do you measure it from row 6? Do you measure it from row 5? In other words, do we say that the din of Royin is only for the narrow limitation? That if you have a vineyard that doesn't have 4 amas in between the rows, it's not a vineyard. For that, the Chachamim say that Royin, as if it's already not here. Guys, you're making believe as if the row is not here. Only for it to qualify as a kedem. But when it is still here, you have to measure 4 amas from it. Or do we say royin so far that whichever one we're going to say royin to, we don't count 4 amas from it. From that, you only count 6 tfachim. But the 4 amas is only counted from the row that you plan to leave. That's what he's really asking. How do I know he's asking that? From the Rav Huna's answer. And Rav Huna has a big chiddush. Amar Rav Huna, that actually means you say it all the way. You say it all the way. Not only royin that it's detached for you not to have a problem. Thus, yes, you have a kedem. No, you don't even count 4 amas from it. Shemuter lahad loisan al gabe zeroyin. That row that you plan to remove, what happens if you have the case that Rav Huna is giving? You have outside the prohibited area, you have barley, you have wheat, you have legumes, you have vegetables. Guys, don't forget, trees are allowed to be planted in a vineyard. Mamish. Okay, just reviewing it. Then even if they are planted outside 4 amas or outside the 6 tfachim, there's another thing, we didn't learn it, but we already spoke it. I cannot take the vine, even if it grows very long, and I'm putting it on a trellis, I cannot trellis it above a foreign plant. Even if the trunk is outside, even the 4 amas, you cannot overlay on top over a foreign plant. These vines you could. Because royin oisa keilo einam mamish mamish means you don't have the limitation of 4 amas. You get it? It's mamish royin all the way. That's what Rav Huna is saying. And the Gemara now will back him up. Now that's a big chiddush, and we're going to back him up to something that we learned today on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. And here again we have the same exact picture. And if you understood it without a picture then, you'll understand it without a picture now. But just put the picture again. In other words, that look at the scenario where you had 3 rows. Going back to that, every row had 5 vines, and 1 and 2. First of all, they have the correct 4 amas interval space, right? So you got yourself a kedem. And number 3, the issue with number 3 is not only that it's not 4 amas. Now you're outside of that, it's not aligned, b'chlal. It's not aligned, and it not being aligned in itself separates it from the kedem. And the big chiddush that we had, that we quoted on Amud Aleph, is that we don't make row 3 subordinate at all the way it's not subordinate. Because one might have argued that since b'mitzias you have row number 3, you have a kedem because of rows 1 and 2. But one might have argued, now that there is row number 3, count the 4 amas from 3. We don't say that. We don't say that. We say that number 1, number 3, you only have to have 6 tefachim. But from where do you count the 4 amas? Only from row number 2. That shows you that if something is not part of the kedem, it's completely not subordinate. Same thing will be over here, according to Rav Huna. The rows that royan oisoi keilu einam are completely not subordinate. They're garnished with garnish. Let's read it inside. Amar Rav Mana, now Hadad, this statement of Rav Huna will be a messiah lahahi that we just learned on Amud Aleph that Rabbi Yossi said. What did Rabbi Yossi say in the case of the picture 1, 2, and 3? But row number 3 is disaligned. That if you plant a foreign seed in area B, so first of all, there's 2 reasons why you may not do it. But what that affects is that not only will row number 2 become kilei hakedem, the kalaim, the vines, because there's foreign seed within 4 amas, but row number 3 also. Row number 3 becomes also. Why? Because within 6 tvachim you have a foreign seed. But with the chiddush,
where's the work area here?
There's no work area here. No, the reason why row number 3, very good. Now you chap, we're putting everything together. Very good, Kevin. Row number 3 is not part of the vineyard for 2 reasons now. Number 1, there's no 4 amas. Number 2, it's not aligned. Very good. But what we said was that if you planted an area B, the chiddush was that that the gefanim, which means row 3 is muted. Even though row 3 physically is closer to area B than row number 2. It's mutter. Why? Because area B is outside 6 tvachim from row 3. The kedem, not only is the foreign seed in area B awesome, the vineyard, rows 1 and 2 become awesome. Row number 3 remains what? How can it remain mutter? Why didn't you say, guys, I get it. It doesn't make the kedem, but it's there. It's in between the isur of the kedem, in between the isur of area B. Doesn't matter. It's keilu einam. It's completely not subordinate all the way until the end. Same thing over here. That's the chiddush of Rav Huna, that you can take these, the ones that we say royin samtsois keilu einam. You can put them over a foreign seed, keilu einam, all the way until the end. Beautiful.